Hey guys, we're going to finish up lesson 76 and 77 today. This is the one that we were working on the Google Meet. So if you printed that lesson out, the blank one, this is just going to be the last page of that. If not, you can scroll back on Classroom to that lesson and print this out if you or look on the computer at it if you didn't print it out that day. So it says the key to simplifying any square root is to find the largest perfect square that is a factor of the radicand. The radicand is going to be the number under the square root sign. And while we're talking about perfect squares, we've talked about these a lot this year when we talked about the dots factoring method. So if you have your post-it for that, you can skip this next part. If you don't have your post-it, then I just want you to write the first 10 perfect squares at the top of this page. If you have your post-it, you can take that out now or find that in your notes wherever that may be and use that and stick it onto this page. But if you don't, let's just refresh our memory on what the first 10 perfect squares are. I'm going to write them at the top of my page. So those are your first 10 perfect squares. I told you last video or on the Google Meet that I want these to be memorized at this point, so please make sure that you know these. You just get these by doing 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, all the way up to 10 times 10. So you want to find the largest perfect square. So for each of these, we're going to do that before we simplify. So for letter A, radical 8, anything that is a factor means that it goes in evenly. So factors always have to be smaller than the number. So for radical 8, my only choices for factors on this list are 1 and 4. And 1 is going to go into everything, and you want the largest. So we never want to choose 1. We always want to choose one that's larger than 1. So 4 goes in evenly to 8. And if you need to know if it goes in evenly, you can just take the number under the radical, so the 8, and divide it by 4 in your calculator, and you're going to get 2. If you get a whole number, that means it's a factor. So 4 is going to be my largest perfect square here. So I would like you to write the largest perfect square from this list that goes into each of these examples, A, B, C, D, E, and F, now, and pause the video. And when you are done, then you can unpause it and check your answer. All you're doing is finding the factors and putting them next to the number and circling it, and then unpause when you're done doing that. Okay, and then once you've done that, these are your largest perfect squares that go into everything. So you're going to change the radicand. So I'm changing from radical 8. I'm now going to change it to radical 4 times radical something else. Now, this is when it comes in handy for you to do this division in your calculator. You're going to have to know what you're multiplying 4 by to get 2. So you take the radicand, which again is the number underneath the radical, and you're going to divide it by the largest perfect square. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. So I'm going to split this up into radical 4 times radical 2, which is the same thing as radical 8, because 4 times 2 is 8. Now I know radical 4 is equal to 2, and I cannot simplify radical 2. So this simplifies, radical 4 simplifies to 2, because 2 times 2 is 4, and radical 2 stays because you can't simplify it, so my answer is going to be 2 radical 2. And I'm going to follow these steps for each of these examples. So radical 45 simplifies to radical 9 times, and then I'm going to do 45 divided by 9, to give me 5. So it's going to be radical 9 times radical 5. Radical 9 is a perfect square. That simplifies to 3. So my answer is 3 radical 5. You're always going to end up with a whole number and a number under the radical. So a whole number and then a non-perfect square under the radical is always what your answer is going to look like. For C, 16 was my largest perfect square. So radical 16 times radical 3 gives me radical 48, because 48 divided by 16 is 3. So 16 times 3 is 48. These two are equivalent. Radical 16 simplifies to 4, and radical 3 stays because it is not a perfect square. So my answer is 4 radical 3. Moving on to D, I have a negative hanging out on the outside, so I'm just going to leave that. That doesn't affect my answer. And then I'm changing this to radical 25, because that's my largest perfect square, times radical 3, because 25 times 3 is 75. Radical 25 simplifies to 5. Keep my radical 3, and my negative hangs out on the outside of my radical. I want you guys to try E and F right now on your own, so you're going to pause the video, do those examples, and unpause the video when you're done. Here are your answers for E and F, 6 radical 2, and then negative 10 radical 5. And there's all your work there, and if you need help checking your answer. Exercise 9, it says, without using your calculator, between what two consecutive integers will this number lie? So again, I'm going to use my list up here from the beginning of the lesson. And I'm going to say, okay, where on this list does 28 lie? It's not on the list, so I know it's not a perfect square. But 28 would go somewhere in here, in between 25 and 36. Now, if I were to square root 25, that would give me 5. And if I were to square root 36, that would be 6. So radical 28 is going to be somewhere in between 5 and 6, because 5 equals radical 25 and 6 equals radical 36. And we all know 28 lies between 25 and 36. Now it says, using your calculator, write out all decimals for radical 28. So do that now, please, and come back when you're finished. Okay, so these are all the decimals that my calculator gave me. My calculator is a little bit different than yours. So if you got less digits or more digits than me, that's okay. I just wrote down what my calculator showed me. Now it says, write down radical 28 in simplest radical form. So again, we're going to use the green list at the top of my page and find the largest perfect square that goes into 28. So I know that 1 goes into 28 because 1 goes into everything. And I know that 4, let's try 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. And then I want you to try in your calculator 28 divided by 9, 28 divided by 16, and 28 divided by 25. And you're looking for any of these three that give you a non-decimal answer. Now, when you plug all of those in, you're going to notice that the rest of these three all give you a decimal. So your largest perfect square is going to be 4. So you're going to split up radical 28 into radical 4 and radical 7. Radical 4 simplifies to positive 2, and you keep your radical 7. So simplest radical form for radical 28 is going to be 2 radical 7. And then you're going to write out the decimal representation for your answer from C, 2 radical 7. So I'm going to do that now. And if you notice, my answers are identical for both of these when you plug them in. And that's how you know you simplified it correctly. Now here's going to be your homework for tonight. These 6 problems, you're going to simplify them completely in simplest radical form. I will post this on Classroom, these notes along with this homework. Please do it on a separate sheet of paper, or you can print this out and you can do it on here and submit a picture. And this is going to be due tomorrow at 2 p.m. Hope you guys have a fabulous rest of your day today, and I will talk to you soon.